This is the Philanthropy Show, connecting and inspiring philanthropy.
Hi, I'm Luann Walters, your host, and this is the Philanthropy Show. Welcome to another great show. Today, we are going to be talking about two things that we really could use to hear a little bit more of, and that is good news in Florida, and also how a county government entity is working for good on the behalf of its community, its citizens. So to help me explain that a little bit, we have a very special guest, and I'm very pleased to introduce to our viewing audience Kelley Parris, who is Executive Director of the Children's Board of Hillsborough County. And the Children's Board is, I'm going to get this correct, a Children's Services Council, of which I think you said there are over 30 nationwide.
32 nationwide, but we have 8 in Florida.
8, and we actually have 2 in the Tampa Bay area.
Yes, we're very lucky to be covered in the Tampa Bay by not only the Children's Board of Hillsborough County, but JWB in Pinellas County.
You know, I think, Kelley, a lot of people know the Children's Board based on the incredible amount of granting annually that the Children's Board is able to do. We're talking millions.
Right.
Millions throughout the county to really children's welfare issues.
We fund about 49 agencies currently as lead agencies, and then many more as sub-agencies under there, but to the tune of about $30 million a year.
Wow.
So it's a considerable amount of money, but we have a focus area that children are ready to learn, children are in safe and stable families, and that they're healthy. So we make a huge impact on the county. But most of the people know the agencies we fund as opposed to the Children's Board.
Right. So let's just name a couple of those, and then, oh yes, and I know that they've probably all seen your logo, excuse me, because we see that on a grantee's sponsorship or whatnot, which is the family, and it kind of starts small or goes big, or starts big and goes small. I can't remember which way.
Depending on which way you look at it.
Going in or going out of the door.
Exactly.
But you see it. So name some of the agencies, for example.
Some of the ones that are older, more established agencies that you would know would be Healthy Families, Healthy Start, Champions for Children, the Children's Home, the Y, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. So we have Reach Up, Positive Spin. We have agencies all over the county. So we truly cover the entire population of Hillsborough County, which is huge, as a matter of fact.
Absolutely. And you know, I first heard of the Children's Board when I was the development director at Community Tampa Bay. This is half a decade ago, but you were a funder as well for Community Tampa Bay. And so people are familiar with, yes, oh yes, they're a funder. But what is a Children's Services Council? Let's back up to the beginning of that. This was actually something that, because and I'm going to say this and then Kelley's going to correct me and get it the right way, but it's something that was agreed to by the state, at the state level?
Well, it's JWB in Pinellas was the first Children's Service Council, and they were established in the 40s.
Wow,
yeah,
that far
they're
back.
very old. Yeah, and so really a group of citizens recognizing that there needed to be more supports for children and families, and the support not coming from the state. So they began a movement which ended up with a referendum, a county-wide referendum, which established JWB. In the 80s, the other ones were established. And it is by referendum. It's funded by ad valorem tax.
And so when you say by referendum, this goes on to, it's voted in at the county level.
At the county level, and then legislated at the state level. So there is state legislation that enabled special taxing districts to exist. So we are a special taxing district at the county level.
Got it.
So this really came out of Colleen Beavis and some other advocates' movement in the 80s. And it's really important for everyone to know that this is flexible dollars. And these flexible dollars are so important because it's able to bring in a larger number of federal dollars, and you're able to really tailor the services you need to the children and families of your area by zip code at least.
Wow.
I mean, drill that far down.
When you say flexible dollars,
flexible dollars, I mean, they're not federal dollars and they're not state dollars. So we fund the Early Learning Council to the tune of about $4 million. $2 million of that goes to slots for low-income families, and $2 million of that goes to build quality within the early learning system. That $2 million is matched with federal dollars, and it comes back to Hillsborough County in the tune of $18 million.
Wow.
So you just can't, if you did not have
I'm
this
trying to
pool of
figure out what
money-
percent that is. That's
Right.
like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's almost 500%
Right.
return. Wow.
Right.
So yeah, so if we, now is this something that has to be voted in every so many years, or is it because it was set, now Children's Services Councils can exist?
Well, several years ago, I believe Senator Negron decided that the Children's Service Councils needed to go back for a vote of the people. And so, and the legislation reads by population. So in 16, as the legislation currently reads, we would go back for referendum, and Pinellas would go back for referendum. So the
Wow,
other
okay.
ones that have gone
That's next year.
That's next year, November of next year. But the other ones that have gone before have had overwhelming success in being voted back and reauthorized. So, but the sad thing about that is it has to be a campaign run so that people will know, because we have traditionally gone under the radar because we wanted our agencies that we fund to be able to raise money and them to be recognized. So it costs money to run a campaign.
Do you know, there's, what's interesting about what you're doing is that, one, it was voted in.
Right.
Two, this really is a community-wide Hillsborough County. It affects every person who pays tax in
Exactly.
Hillsborough County. And then number three, what you're doing with those funds and how you're helping many facets of it. And I do want to dive into that a little bit more, because we're talking about children's welfare and
Right.
families. But first, let's find out a little bit about Kelley too, because I wanted to kind of go through this Children's Services Council question mark, because I
Yes.
don't think a lot of people, they might have heard of it, but go
Right.
what? So now we kind of know a little bit more about what that is. But how did you come to the Children's Board? And I love her accent, very slight, very soft. I know you did a lot of work with nonprofits in Alabama.
I did.
You've got a big background with I think, domestic abuse, with welfare, with, so tell us a little bit
Domestic
about
violence, child welfare, and mental illness.
And mental
actually.
illness,
Yeah. Well, before coming here, I ran the Alabama Department of Child Abuse Prevention. So
Wow.
we did the same thing across the state as we do at the Children's Board, but it was statewide.
Is that a Children's Services Council?
No, it's a state agency. It's
Okay.
a standalone state agency. But the beauty of coming to Hillsborough County is that it has really a stable funding base that we talked about earlier, and you can see so much more positive movement in the children and families that you serve, being in one county and not the entire state.
Yeah.
And you're constrained by state and federal dollars when you're running that state agency. So there's so many things you can't be flexible with. So it's very difficult to see that positive movement in a population when you have to make the
How do you
services
measure it?
fit. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So we have great outcomes. What we're seeing in Hillsborough County is really phenomenal, with children being ready to read when they start school, children being healthy because we fund immunizations and sealants for children's teeth. You know, when you start drilling down and looking at the data, you would be floored at the number of oral emergencies that enter our hospitals with children.
Wow.
So putting those sealants on their teeth are very, very important. I mean,
I bet you have a really different perspective by looking at that kind of data, hearing the
Right.
stories from the agencies that you're funding as to what really is the snapshot of child welfare
Right.
in Hillsborough County and what that looks like. And so we're going to take our first break, but when we
Good.
come back, I want to talk about what does that look like in Hillsborough County, and then kind of a comparison with the rest of the state of Florida to give us a sense of where we are. And so we're going to take our first break on the Philanthropy Show, but we'll be right back after this word from our sponsors.
This show sponsored in part by
My Paper Pusher. Consider it done.
Hello, I'm Samantha Abraham, CEO of My Paper Pusher, with your financial tip of the week. Have you ever heard of the fraud triangle? The fraud triangle is a visual way of thinking about the three factors that group together to lead to fraudulent behavior. The three factors that combine to create the perfect circumstances for fraud are motivation, opportunity, and rationalization. Motivation is the force driving an employee to commit fraud, such as personal financial stress. Opportunity is the environment in which someone believes that it will be difficult to be caught committing fraud, and if they don't get caught, they will likely continue to seize the opportunity. Rationalization is the means of justifying the act of fraud. They may rationalize their behavior by feeling that they are just borrowing the funds and will pay it back later. Next time, find out how you can prevent motivation, opportunity, and rationalization from turning into fraud. I'm Samantha Abraham with My Paper Pusher, where you can consider it done.
The Philanthropy Show is on demand every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at both thephilanthropyshow.com and YouTube/WatchMVVP TV.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show, talking today with Kelley Parris, the Executive Director of the Children's Board of Hillsborough County. And before the break, I had mentioned I really wanted to talk into kind of the specifics around Hillsborough County and then look at the state of Florida. For the other states who may be watching, these might be some good comparisons or comparables that you could look at the metrics in your own cities or regions or states. So what are we seeing with regard to child welfare and families that are the needs? What are we seeing that are the big
Well, you know,
pop-outs?
child welfare gets a bad rap. It is a very difficult job, and you're dealing with generational circumstances. But I will say that when you look at child deaths across Hillsborough County, only about a third of those are ever known to child welfare. The rest are absolutely 100% preventable, and they are unsafe sleep environments, they are drownings, and shaken baby. So we are about to launch a huge campaign starting May 19th with our partners JWB from Bay to Bay.
For a Tampa Bay initiative.
For Tampa Bay initiative, the most efficient way to use your taxpayer dollars to end child death from those three things. I mean, we have lost probably just in Hillsborough County almost 90 children since 2011 over that. 450
What is this
a
now?
year
When you say
statewide.
from sleep, are you saying that unsafe sleep, there's not a crib in place? Is this just a matter of parents not knowing?
That is co-sleeping or sleeping in an unsafe crib with, you know, items in the crib. It is positional asphyxiation, falling asleep on the couch, falling asleep in the recliner, and a infant being wedged in there.
Oh,
it is a devastating effect on families. I mean, devastating. So we know that those can be prevented.
And drownings.
Right, and you know, we really need the merchants' help with this, because when you go in a store and you look at a crib, just picture it in your mind with all the pillows, the bumpers, the netting, and that is absolutely unsafe for an infant to be placed in.
So tell me about your campaign then, because you brought up something that, you know, we have a passion about, corporate and nonprofits partnerships as well, that you could maybe work that in or are working in within your campaign.
Yes, we are. This is the first leg of it, but we've got to get business buy-in on this, because marketing of child, you know, bedding is huge when you comes to unsafe sleep, but also with children drowning. I mean, last year on Mother's Day weekend, we had 4 children drown in the Bay Area. You think about the ripple effects of that through families. It's even if you were at a party, you know, drowning is such a silent death for a child. So, and 100% preventable. So we have to look at gates. We have to look at public policy associated with that. You look at the home foreclosures in Hillsborough County alone and across Florida, and the number of those homes that were left vacant, number of those homes that had pools. So what happens with those pools? What if we had an ordinance where the code enforcement could come in and drain those pools when they were unoccupied?
Who do you work with then? You work with the county commission, you work with the cities themselves as well, the mayor's offices, or who do you work with from as a sanctioned or I don't know what you call yourself, a government entity?
Right, special taxing district.
Special taxing district.
Yes,
Who do you work with?
we work with the county and the city governments. So right now we produced a DVD that, thank goodness, the cities and the counties are giving them out with every pool permit that's released. We also work with the apartment complex group. So every apartment complex that they sign a lease that have children involved. They give them a DVD if they're, if they're participating in
And
the
the leases
program.
come from the city?
The leases on the individual apartments.
Okay.
So if you come in and you lease an apartment, and you've got 3 children, and the apartment complex has a pool, then if they're participating in this, they would give you a DVD to watch, so
that's
you would
great.
know how to keep your kids safe around a pool. And then you've also got abusive head trauma, which is shaken baby, and we also pay for babysitter certification. We sponsor some of those programs, so they can come to your neighborhood and or wherever. Mobile is the way to deliver services now. So they can come to you and you can get your neighborhood association together and have the kids take safe caregiver classes.
Kelley, have you found that with this kind of an entity, a Children's Services Council, the effectiveness, and this probably speaks to your knowledge of other areas of Florida that may not have a Children's Services Council as well, that might be thinking about, should we have one? Really, should we get one? That this is one more way of partnering with the county commissioners, with the cities that are involved in the counties to correct policy, enhance policy, do campaigns like you're talking about. Do you see where I'm going? I mean, it's like a collaborative there.
Yeah, the important thing about children's service councils and special taxing districts is the money they save on the back end. So if your concern for children is not your number one priority, because maybe you don't have children, or maybe you're a grandparent with grandchildren living out of state, it really saves so much money on the back end, and it brings so much more money into your area. But I understand that not every county has the population base to support a Children's Service Council. But the important thing is for the circuit, maybe it should go by judicial circuit. So a judge may have 6 counties in their circuit. Then you could have a Children's Service Council for that, everyone, that whole circuit. So all 6 counties could benefit for services. There's really very little reason not to do it because of the dollars that it brings in to support children and families on top of what's already being spent.
And do you work in Hillsborough County also with certain judges?
Oh, yes.
Who might have to be involved
Hillsborough
in
County
domestic cases?
Hillsborough County is so fortunate to have the collaboration and the buy-in from the not only elected officials but appointed officials. Judge Esrig in Hillsborough County does a wonderful job, as do the other, dependency and juvenile court judges. You have a county commission that is so concerned, and especially the leadership of the county commission. So you've got to have those county officials supporting it, also the business community. We have seen with the referendum looming in 2016, really the business community come together. They know the impact of that $30 million and what it has, not only on children and families, but the economy of Hillsborough County.
30, that is a huge number, 30 million, that you're doing annually to be able to. So tell me about that grant process. I know that we have some folks in Hillsborough County who are probably would love the opportunity to sit down with you and say, this is what I do, how can I apply for a grant? Tell me about your the grant process a little bit too.
We have grants that range from county-wide. So we have platforms of grants. So you have the grants that are county-wide, which is the largest grant, and then you have it regionally within the county, which is the next to largest grants. And then you may have them place-based, which are absolutely zip code specific, that are there's a problem that we target in that zip code, and those services are placed within that area. Then you have the faith-based community. We have grants specifically for them, and then we have technical assistance grants that are open to any nonprofit in the county. And those are smaller grants that are usually $5,000 or less, and you can buy anything to maximize, the effectiveness of your nonprofit agency. So we really try to cover everybody in Hillsborough County, as many as possible, to support what they're doing in the community.
What are you looking for? Before the show, you and I talked a little bit about sustainability versus urgent need. And because you are really plugged into what's going on in Hillsborough County, being connected with the county commission, I'm sure the police department, the mayor, what's going on. What are you looking for in in how you are making your grants?
Well, I'll tell you what is an urgent need across the nation right now is really this issue of violence in our communities. And so we've had an uptick in violence in Hillsborough County. And we realize that summer is fast approaching. And we've got to put some programs in place to keep those kids safe during the summer, while other people can get a handle on what's going on with the violence in these communities. So we are working with the religious community, we're working with ATF, law enforcement, you know, the county government, city governments to put some programs in place. We can't do it all, but we can certainly, you know, shoulder our fair share of supporting programs. And we've got to do that across this nation during these summer months to keep our children safe. But it's having those flexible dollars, again, that allows you to do that.
And that's wonderful. This is a big task that you have.
Yes.
You're really overseeing the county and saying, how can we, two different ways here, not just, which is also important, but not just about granting for the most effectiveness,
Right.
but also granting for the most responsibility, fiduciary, something
Exactly.
for the taxpayers who are funding
Exactly.
the grant pot, so to speak, with that.
Exactly. We have a tremendous oversight of not only ourselves but our agencies also. So we have, one of the first things that happens when you receive a grant from the Children's Board is we sit down and you have a matrix of outcomes. So we sit down with you, we negotiate what we expect to see, the progress we expect to see, and how you're going to get there. And we have technical assistance from our staff along the way, and our staff is rich with years of experience. So they know exactly what's needed to help. We have a contract with nonprofit leadership, so if they need board development, if they need staff development, if they need training, then we support that through nonprofit leadership. So it's really an all-inclusive safety net process. But going back to the flexibility of dollars, there are population shifts going on in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County has seen tremendous growth. So right now, we're seeing the individuals in North Boulevard moved out of that housing complex around the county. So the services we have placed by zip code in that area, we're going to have to rethink that.
Wow.
So you have to
But
really
you have
stay
the
on top
flexibility
of it.
to do
Yes,
that.
we have the flexibility to do that.
And to meet the changes that are happening at the time.
So it's complex, but when you see the outcomes, it's very rewarding and such a benefit to the community.
Wow. Well, thanks. We're time for break number 2, but we will come right back after this word from our studio sponsor, the Nonprofit Leadership Center. More with Kelley Parris after this.
And now a word from our studio sponsor.
Hi, I'm Emily Benham, CEO of the Nonprofit Leadership Center, the studio sponsor for the Philanthropy Show. I love to read, and one of the great benefits of my job is that I get to read all kinds of books about new ways to create impact and lasting change for myself, my organization, and my community. Sometimes it's also fun to go back to old favorites. This year, I am fortunate to be part of the Community Foundation's Nonprofit CEO program, and we are reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Even though this book was published in 1989, it still resonates with me on issues I face as a leader every day. My tip for you today via Stephen Covey: remember to schedule some balcony time for yourself. That's the critical thinking time that you need to really engage in strategic thinking rather than tactical tasks. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day activities and go non-stop in that mode. But if we don't remember to step back and take a longer view of the big picture, we may not recognize fantastic opportunities right in front of us. So please join me on that balcony from time to time. And remember, in the symphony world, sometimes that's where the music sounds best. Thank you.
Follow the Philanthropy Show on Facebook for behind-the-scenes action, polls, and commentary.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show, segment number 3 already. We are today with Kelley Parris, the Executive Director of the Children's Board of Hillsborough County, who has a very big responsibility when you consider everything that she's responsible to do, and receiving those taxpayer dollars, to funneling them appropriately, to working through the biggest initiatives for child welfare and families in Hillsborough County. Thank you for what
Thank
you do.
you.
You mentioned something right before the break about working with the Nonprofit Leadership Center, and I know that you do support the Leadership Center in a big way, the NLC, in the grants that you're able to give. And talk a little bit about that, because I think this is also a resource that I believe there are 6 or 7 of these types of nonprofit centers throughout Florida as well, and throughout the U.S., but that kind of a partnership can really help with the growth of a nonprofit.
We want opportunity and access for all agencies that serve children and families. So part of that is partnering with agencies that do great work, but they may not have the infrastructure in place that they need to be accountable for those dollars. So that's where our technical assistance comes in, and that's where nonprofit leadership comes in. An agency is only as good as its board. We know that from years of experience. So nonprofit leadership provides guidance, training, support for that agency and their board. So when you have a strong, involved board, you're providing a service that is a proven need for the area, your chances of not doing great things and flourishing are very little. So we're very proud of them as a partner.
And I love that, and I love the testimonial that you gave in break, what that you see from the data, the agencies that go through these classes and how well they do.
I look at, on a quarterly basis, I look at utilization for nonprofit leadership. So every quarter I get a printout of what agencies have gone through what training, and their boards have gone through what training, how many in the agency have gone through the training. And it is amazing to see the growth and development of those agencies and the success of those agencies. So I would recommend any funding agency to set aside a small part of their budget for training through their area of nonprofit leadership.
You know, this is why Sharon and I created the Philanthropy Show as well, because we, you know, our mission is to connecting and inspiring philanthropy through 3 intentions: to educate, to uplift, and to empower. Because we don't have in the nonprofit sector the kinds of trainings, the kinds of educational opportunities that are available in the corporate world. And for us to be able to, you know, there are a couple of areas within the sector who have that. I think that universities in that educational realm, they do a good job of offering continued education and that kind of thing. But so thank you for doing that.
Well, Luann, that you said something that I would just like to take a moment to speak to, because I've run nonprofits before, started nonprofits before, and the mindset of a nonprofit really is, how can I ask for the least amount of money so I can fund my agency? We have got to move away from that.
Yes.
We have got to say, what do we need to provide the best services to children and families, to whomever you serve, and what is that going to cost? So if it's training, it's training. If it's personnel that are so qualified to work with these children and families, that's what we need. So we have got to move from that area of, you know, how short can my shoestring be?
Lack consciousness.
Yes, yes.
If I can save $1 here and we can write it down instead of upgrading our database.
Right.
We're saving our donors dollars.
Right.
And I've said this on previous shows, and I totally agree with you on this. And yay, Kelley, take that banner and I'll march it with you, because that's where I think that I do see it shifting in the nonprofit sector. I see us moving away from that and actually starting to say, for us to really serve our donors' dollars or our taxpayers' dollars, we have to be efficient and effective. And we can't do that if we're not giving our people the kinds of training that they need or the tools and resources that they need to do their jobs to the best of their ability. We're ripping them off, really. We're not serving them.
We have got to get out of that mindset and get into, yes, our employees deserve a match to their 401k. Our employees deserve a education
there are
program.
nonprofits going, who has a 401k? What?
I know, but we need to be attracting the best and the brightest also. I mean, we have a huge mission out there. There's nothing more important to the fabric of this nation, this county, this city, than our children and families.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, we're running out of time, but I want to get into our last section, and just really loved having you on the show talking about all that you're doing for Hillsborough County and motivating other counties across Florida and throughout the country in doing the same kind of work. But we have a section that we call Truth or Care, which is about what is your heart's definition of philanthropy. And that is just from the standpoint of why do you do what you do? Why are you involved in the nonprofit world? It might be a story, it might be an example, a transformative experience, something that you think of, that you say, this is what this means to me.
Well, a little bit about my history in nonprofit. I came from one of the most depressed areas in the nation, the Black Belt of Alabama. And we did not have a mental health center when I was growing up. I had a particularly warm spot in my heart for the mentally ill. And we got one. In the 70s, we got one. So I helped paint the building, the inside of the building when it was built, and from bond issue money. Then years later, I worked with nonprofits, with domestic violence victims, with terminally ill children, and then I moved back to the place where I grew up and ran the mental health center. I was the director there for years. And so I think requiring children to give back early is important. But I think everybody is a philanthropist, that everybody has something to give. I have probably the biggest flaw in my personality is I really don't like people that don't give back. And I know that's terrible, but I don't. Because everybody has something to give. If you don't have money, you read to a child, you cook for the homeless, you clean the Humane Society on the weekend, the cages. I mean, everybody can give back. And from the deep in the recesses of my Catholic heart, I think you'll suffer if you don't.
And they may not know how.
Yes.
You know, I think that's a stigma, but I love what you're saying too. From the early days, you found the value in it,
Right.
because it was important to you, and you found a way to contribute.
Right.
And I agree with you. Everybody is a philanthropist. I know we get into the semantics and the nitpickiness over who's a donor and who's a philanthropist. But if philanthropy means the love of humanity,
Right.
then you do that through your dollars, you do that through your time, you do that through your skill set, whatever you have.
Hillsborough County is really rich with foundations, but this is the thing that you have to remember. You may not appreciate that until you come from where I came from, where there is no foundation. And you can see the difference in the fabric of the community.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's very important.
Well, thank you, Kelley.
Thank you for having me.
We're out of time now, but thank you so much for being on the show.
I
Really
appreciate
appreciate it. Thank you for what you do for Hillsborough County, and thank you for sharing that and educating us a little bit more on that. So we are wrapping up another philanthropy show, but we appreciate you tuning in and watching. And remember that you can go online and check out all of our other shows in the Past Shows tab. We are video on demand, so anytime, could be 3 a.m. on a Sunday, who knows. Catch our next show. We'll see you next week at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Do you have an idea for the Philanthropy Show? Contact us via our website or email us at tps@myvideovoice.com.